Morning poured over the winding road like golden honey, lighting the fields and rooftops with the gentle glow of a new day. Travelers moved toward the busy city market, farmers with carts, merchants with baskets, and villagers hoping to trade their goods. Among them walked a quiet old man named Harris. His steps were slow but steady, the steps of a man who had learned something most people never do: that rushing through life rarely makes it better. In his worn leather satchel were only a few coins and 3 old savings bonds. Nothing that would attract attention, or so it seemed. Because under the shade of a large banyan tree near the road, 3 young men were watching him closely. Their names were John, Peter, and Robert. They were known in nearby villages for many things. Hard work was not one of them. John was the loud one, full of clever ideas and empty pockets. Peter was the leader, charming when he wanted something, dangerous when he did not get it. Robert was quieter, but unfortunately he had a terrible habit of following the other 2. Peter leaned forward and nudged John. "Look at that old man," he whispered. John listened carefully. From Harris's satchel came the gentle clink of coins. John grinned. "Well," he said, "it sounds like someone's savings are taking a morning walk." Robert frowned. "He's just an old traveler," he said. "Leave him alone. My dear Robert," he said softly. "Opportunity rarely knocks twice, but sometimes it walks slowly down the road." And that morning, none of them realized that the road ahead held an opportunity of a very different kind. A few moments later, Harris stopped near a well to greet a farmer. His calm voice drifted across the road. "Yes, the city market is just 3 kilometers ahead," he said. "I plan to return before dusk, if my old legs agree." The 3 young men exchanged excited glances. Peter's eyes sparkled. "Did you hear that?" he whispered, "returning at dusk, tired, alone, and probably carrying money." John rubbed his hands together. "Gentlemen," he said proudly, "I believe destiny has finally remembered us." Robert sighed. Destiny usually chases us with sticks, but the plan was already forming. They would pretend to help the old man on his return journey, and once the road grew quiet, they would help themselves to his money. A few minutes later, as Harris passed beneath the banyan tree, Peter stepped forward. "Good morning, sir," he called cheerfully. Harris turned, his calm eyes studying the 3 young men. "Good morning," he replied gently. "Are you heading to the market?" Peter asked. "Yes," Harris said with a smile. "A few simple errands." John stepped forward confidently. "That's quite a walk," he said. "Why travel alone when 3 strong young men could accompany you?" Peter nodded warmly. "Think of us as your nephews for the day." Harris studied their faces for a long moment. Then he smiled. "Well," he said softly, "the road is long indeed. Come along." The 3 cheaters exchanged satisfied glances. Step 1 of their plan had worked perfectly. As they walked, Peter casually asked, "So, Uncle, what brings you to the market today?" Harris chuckled. "Oh, nothing extraordinary. Just flour, oil, a few tools, and perhaps I will cash in my 3 old savings bonds." Peter almost stopped walking. 3 bonds, he said carefully. Harris nodded. "Yes. They have been sitting in my satchel for years." John whispered to Peter, "Did he say 3 bonds?" Peter nodded slowly. Robert muttered, "I suddenly feel like destiny is sharpening a knife." But greed had already taken control of their imaginations. In their minds, the old man's money was already theirs. The city market was alive with noise and color. Vendors shouted. Children laughed. Spices filled the air. Harris walked calmly through the crowd until he stopped in front of a long stone building behind the market square. It was strangely quiet. "Sit here for a moment," Harris told the 3 men. "I must speak with someone inside." Peter leaned toward John. "This must be where he sells the bonds," he whispered. John grinned. "Excellent." His eyes gleamed with greedy excitement as he glanced toward the heavy doors of the quiet hall. To him, Those doors no longer looked like the entrance to a building. They looked like the entrance to easy fortune. Neither of them noticed how strangely silent the place felt, as if the hall itself were waiting for something to unfold. Inside the hall stood a tall, serious man. Harris spoke quietly with him. Then Harris turned back to the three young men. "My friends," he said kindly, "I have a question." They leaned forward eagerly. "Should I sell one bond, 2 bonds, or all 3? For half a second, the 3 men stared at each other. Then greed exploded from their mouths. "Sell all 3. Their voices echoed loudly across the silent hall. Harris smiled gently. "Very well," he said. Then he turned to the tall man. "Henry, please proceed." Henry stepped forward slowly. His voice thundered through the hall. "You 3 cannot leave," he said. John blinked. "What?" Henry pointed directly at them. "You have just agreed to the sale." Peter frowned. "What sale?" Henry's eyes hardened. "You shouted clearly," he said. "Sell all 3. John laughed nervously. "Yes, the bonds." Henry shook his head. "No," he said calmly. "You." The 3 men froze. "Congratulations," Henry continued. "You have just sold yourselves." The doors closed behind them, and the next years were educational. John was given a broom. The first time he tried sweeping, a mouse ran across the floor. John jumped onto a chair, shouting, "I agreed to work here, not to battle wild beasts." Robert laughed so hard he dropped a pot of soup. Within 5 minutes, he managed to create the fastest apple avalanche in market history. Apples rolled across the hall like an army escaping battle. Henry calmly observed the chaos. "Remarkable," he said. "You've invented fruit warfare." Robert tried cooking bread. The result was so hard that Henry tapped it on the table. The sound echoed like a hammer striking stone. "Interesting," Henry said. "If the bakery fails, we may sell these as building materials." Despite the disasters, something slowly changed. The 3 men began to work honestly. They learned patience. They learned humility. And strangely enough, they began to laugh at their own foolishness. Years later, when they were finally released, the 3 men walked back into the village. They were stronger, wiser, and far less greedy. At the edge of the road stood Harris, waiting quietly. John bowed his head. "Sir," he said slowly, "you didn't sell us that day." Harris smiled gently. "No," he said, "you sold yourselves." And from that day forward, the villagers often told the strange story of the 3 cheaters, the wise old traveler, and the market where greed sold its own masters. A story from beyond the ordinary, because sometimes the greatest trick in the world is simply allowing foolishness to reveal itself.